Innovating Education Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.
A growing exodus of well-educated young people, austerity measures biting the state sector, and affordable fees in the private sector. Education is at the heart of the European recession. This week on Learning World, we explore the impact of Europe's economic crisis on education. Almost half of Spain's young people are unemployed, meaning that increasing numbers of them are leaving the country and looking for work abroad. Is it really a brain drain? And what are the challenges?
This is Valencia, Spain's third biggest city. Spain's one of the European countries most affected by the crisis. The unemployment rate is above 25%, which doubles among young people. Many graduates like Andrés are still studying due to the lack of job prospects.
Right now, thanks to my parents, I'm getting along and studying. Anyway, in summer, weekends, I work as a waiter, gardener, or whatever.
After his daily job hunting, Andrés goes to the Polytechnic University. Today he has an English class. He takes 5 hours each week. His professor has spent 15 years teaching at the university and says the reality is stark.
Students coming from high school have weaknesses. I haven't been able to work on their oral skills. Also, they're younger. They're unaware that English is vital and they'll have to use this language outside the classroom.
Many of Andrés' friends are thinking of leaving the country.
I would like to work abroad. Any country in Europe would do. In Germany. I like the motor industry.
In Germany, 7% of young people under 25 don't have jobs. In Spain, the youth unemployment rate is around 53%, 7 times higher. Pepe Bretons, Andrés' friend, went to Berlin to look for a job and talked to us via Skype.
I went to Berlin because I finished my degree 3 years ago. I studied industrial engineering and specialised in mechanics. I was unable to find a job in this field. I already knew Germany a little because I went there on an Erasmus scholarship. I came here to try and see how it goes.
On the subject of the massive brain drain, we spoke with the Vice Dean of the UNIVERSITAT POLITECNICA de Valencia. He's been linked to this university over 3 decades as a student teacher and now Vice Dean.
The concern is not so much the talent that's been nurtured at the universities in the short term. This talent is leaving for countries that are in a better economic position. However, the concern is if we fail to create conditions for economic recovery, also to create a powerful science and technology system strong enough to absorb them, we certainly have every reason to be very concerned.
Que sea capaz de nuevo de recuperarlos, ciertamente tenemos motivos para estar todos muy preocupados.
Only 10 years ago, Spain welcomed with open arms young talent from abroad, such as Nadeza Apostolova from the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. She was recently named one of the best young pharmacologists in Europe. What options do young researchers in Spain have at the moment?
Right now I have a contract here and I'm at ease and I'm doing what I love, which is research. But I don't have a permanent job. I'm not a civil servant or anything. It's a temporary contract. So when it nears its end, if I don't see any other option, yes, indeed, I'll plan to leave without any doubt. I don't rule it out.
The Spanish labour market is so fragile that it's not able to maintain even established talent like her.
When times are tough, people migrate from one country to another. While within education, students migrate from private to state-run schools. It is understandable, but in Greece, this is putting enormous pressure on the system.
Back to school in Greece was on September the 12th, but the gates opened on empty schools. Teachers were on strike, protesting at the latest austerity measures. Since 2010, the crisis has exacerbated an already underfunded state education system. Private schools take up the slack, but they've become too expensive for most people.
1,000 schools in Greece have closed or merged. This has consequences, especially in the countryside. It means families have to move to the cities or drop out of school.
Natasa Georgiadou signed her daughter Olga up for private school, but can't afford the fees anymore.
I'm self-employed and I've never worked non-stop, but now I have hardly any work at all. My husband had 2 jobs, now he only has 1 because his other employer went bust and laid everyone off. So we can't afford as much, especially as we don't know how things are going to develop.
Olga now goes to a state school, but things are very different to how they were before.
Last year, Olga was working in a classroom where the walls moved. By the end of the year, plaster was falling off when the children played, and then the wall collapsed.
Olga's mother would have liked to have sent her daughter to the Italian school in Athens. Fees are 4,000 to 5,000 euros a year, but that's hard to afford today.
Η κρίση έχει επηρεάσει σε σημαντικό βαθμό σε ένα ποσοστό της τάξης του 20% ενδεχομένως και περισσότερο.
The crisis has had a huge effect on private schools. The figures are more than 20% down in terms of inscriptions where welcoming new first-year pupils is concerned, or moving on through the years. We're also losing pupils to the state system, especially during the middle school years.
Αιμορραγία, μετακίνηση από το ιδιωτικό προς το δημόσιο σχολείο, σε ενδιάμεσες τάξεις.
Vasilis Strazas teaches maths in a state secondary school in Athens. He's had a 400 euros a month pay cut. In 2 years' time, he'll probably be forced to retire earlier than planned. Most of these early retirees won't be replaced.
The oldest among us are getting the sack. In other words, the most experienced, like me. I've taught in the state sector for 33 years, but I'm being forced out without a say in the matter, on a reduced pension. And I'm being replaced, if I'm replaced at all, with a youngster who's paid 800 euros a month.
Parents, teachers and pupils are wondering what to do in the dark days that lie ahead.
Portugal is also seeing increased migration. In their case, thousands of people have either moved or want to move to former colonies, echoing the massive emigration of the 60s and 70s. More and more unemployed teachers are being lured to Brazil, where salaries can be much higher than back home.
Every time he walks into the courtyard, it feels like a victory for João Mergulhão. The Sao Paulo School of Economics is one of the best in Brazil. 32-year-old João is the only Portuguese professor in the faculty. It gives him great satisfaction, and it's also the reward for sacrificing his past life.
I feel like a citizen of the world. The reality is that life today is all about being on the move, not staying in one place. I think it's a mistake to see the crisis with bitterness and revolt against it. You have to see it as a sort of post-war period, but without the dead.
Turning crisis into opportunity, João left Portugal and the crisis behind him. He went to London and studied at the London School of Economics for 5 years. He ran out of money in 2011, so left for Brazil, where the economy was booming.
In Portugal, the number of schools like this has shrunk, but the methods in Brazilian higher education are the same because the professors have doctorates from American and European universities.
João loves living and teaching in Brazil. It matters not an iota, both for him and his students, that Brazil is a former colony which once saw emigration going in the opposite direction, to Europe.
Even if the language is the same, I have to be bilingual in that same language. I have to change the way I speak if I want to be understood. The reality is, Brazil has been seen as the country of the future since the 17th century. Now, the future has arrived.
His great regret is that his family is 10,000 kilometers away. To cure his homesickness for Portugal, João embraces Sao Paulo to the full, its skyline and its landscapes. He is well settled in with his wife Christiane, and he likes meeting fellow Portuguese émigrés like himself.
It's very hard to live far from family and friends. Portugal is a country with 900 years of history, which is going through a tough period. But I think there's a way out. There will be job opportunities for me and for anyone who emigrates. One day, I will go home.
Well, as we have just heard, every cloud has a silver lining. Emigration can open up new opportunities. So what about you? Would you be better off if you moved abroad? We look forward to reading your feedback on our social media pages. Goodbye for now.
Learning World in association with WISE, an initiative of Qatar Foundation.